Greetings, YouTube. I was just looking at a game called Astra Terra. I needed to make sure I read it correctly. And I'm currently reading Bugbears and Borderlands. Um, but Astra Terra is a game set in a world that had been a torus, a donut-shaped world that has been broken up into pieces because of a great war. And then people still live on those sections, and they use ships to get from place to place to place. So yeah, it's got a certain evocative mental image. Well, while I'm reading it, the mechanism of the game is really simple. It is a game that uses nothing but the classic D6. Now, there's something to be said for the classic D6. Everyone's got some. I mean, if you're watching this video, you probably have hundreds of them, like I do. Um, but your average person probably has some D6 just kicking around because they have a Yahtzee game. You can buy them almost anywhere. Go to Walmart, you can find them without a problem. All right, they're easily acquired, and there's lots of gaming stores out there that have really cool stuff. You can even find them at like Newberry Comics. They have a fairly decent small selection of dice that you can go peruse. Um, I've hit Diversity Games in Hooksett, New Hampshire recently, and they have a really nice selection of dice. It's where I got my D20 hit location dice. Really very cool. Um, Rather D12, sorry, not D20, D12. And it got me thinking, how many of us have done on-the-fly game mechanics? I'm not talking about just game mechanics that are pure spoken word, because there are narrative games people have done on the fly. Uh, you know, storytelling events that are designed to incorporate everyone. So they're cooperative storytelling events. But I'm talking about a system that actually has some mechanics. It's got things you roll, all right? How many of us have done this? Now, Astra Terra uses, again, I said D6s, and you have some stats, and if they're like 6, they're slightly different than your standard D&D. But each one is going to have a score of between 1 and 5. 1 being very, very poor at that particular skill, and 5 being you are at the top of like of the of the human capacity to have that particular trait, whether it's agility or your brawn or your intelligence. 5 is the top, and it's a simple dice pool mechanic where you're rolling the dice, and as long as you get a 4, 5, 6, it's a success. A 1 is a complication essentially, and a 6 explodes. And an exploding dice means that if you get a 6, you roll again and you add that to the 6. If you get another 6, it keeps rolling until you cease to roll 6s. I've always been quite fond of exploding dice for certain mechanics. Um, and I realized I'm reading it, and I'm like, well, I did that years ago, decades ago, on the fly once for a friend of mine. The two of us were sitting there, and they were bored, and so I like, okay, let's come up with something. And so right there, without even cracking a book open, I just grabbed some play paper and a pencil, and they grabbed some dice, and we created a a system almost identical to Astra Terra's off the top of my head. I used it more than once. It's kind of a derivative of Fudge in some ways. Fudge is also a decent system, though how it evolved into Fate mystifies me. Um, and I like the Astra Terra system. It's beautifully simple. You know, if you're going to be doing a climbing thing, is it an agility thing or is it a physic strength thing? So you have to figure out what it is. You use your brawn or you use your agility. How many successes you got? You compare it to a challenge of how many successes you need. You're done. Simple system. Okay, there are no skills essentially, though you can have character traits or species traits that give you bonuses. So you like have an extra die if you are particularly skilled at something or your species is known for a particular trait. Say you're playing like a dwarf character known for an incredibly strong, you know, physique and can resist poisons and things like that. So you're going to get a bonus die when it comes to resisting poisons. Boom. That makes it much easier to get past that challenge rating. Again, super simple. And again, almost identical to the system that I came up with on the fly years ago, even before I'd heard of fudge. I guess great minds think alike. But I know some of us out there have done this. We have created our own systems just, and we've gone with it. So I want to know how many of you have done this? And because it's my favorite size shape of the universe, the dodecahedron is the perfect platonic solid in my opinion. How many of you used the D12 in your process of doing something on the fly? I am very disappointed in myself that I did not think to use a D12 back when I had this system coming into my mind. I used the D6 because, again, ubiquitous. Everybody's got some. Super easy to acquire. These, not so much for your average person. Um, so how many have us had done this, and what mechanisms have we used? And I'd be intrigued to see if people gravitate towards dice pools when it comes to this particular concept of doing something on the fly. I really would be intrigued to see where the split is between a dice pool system or a single or a tight focused roll like there's a D12 two there's a 2D12 system out there I can think of off the top of my head, and lots of things are based on D20s because the original D&D game was. So how many of us have done that split? Now remember, I'm a D20 fanatic, and yet when it came to that moment and I just did an ad hoc game, I immediately defaulted to a D6 die pool system without even thinking about it. And I can't tell you why, but it just felt like the simplest, fastest, easiest thing to do off the top of my head. In case anyone was wondering, it was a post-apocalyptic themed game where the main character wakes up and finds themselves essentially as a naked man with a strange symbol tattooed on their chest. And as they continue, they come to realize that have been rejected from a program, but someone had felt pity for them, so they'd essentially wiped their brains and threw them out literally into the wilderness in the hopes that they might have a shot at survival, but they were part of a super soldier program. So they were like their space marine perfection when it comes to physicality, but they had an absolute blank mind when it comes to dealing with the world. Didn't run. We didn't. We ran for a few sessions. It was fun, letting the player discover what they could do and what they could get away with. They could literally like pick up an entire carcass of a small cow without even thinking about it. They're like, "How can I do this? This is well beyond the capacity of your average person." But because it was you are essentially Captain America. Um, but yeah, I thought that was fun to do. It was. So let's talk about dice pools and single roll systems, but stuff that we did on the fly.